Hello, everyone. Happy Friday. First Friday of August. I guess we are officially in the back half of the year. Welcome to the IT Hour. I'm Becky Scott. We've got Urvashi, Alexa, and Derek. Welcome, Derek. First time
Thank
on the
you.
IT Hour. Thanks for
I'm
joining
stoked to
us.
be here. I get to watch every week and I want to join and have had a great topic to come in and talk about. So I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, we're very excited for your topic today. I'm trying to do a better job of introducing us on the IT hour because I always just assume, our names are displayed on the screen. So I always just assume everyone knows who we are. I'm the head of community at JumpCloud. Alexa runs meetups and produces the IT hour and a bunch of other programs at JumpCloud. And Urvashi is our technical champion. And Derek, why don't you tell everyone what you do here at JumpCloud?
Awesome. So my name is Derek Johnson. I'm a principal product manager here at JumpCloud. Been here a little over a year and a half. And my primary role is around the product management part of orchestration and automation. And so very focused on making it easier for admins to do their day-to-day tasks within JumpCloud and create as much automation as possible. So that's my focus.
That's great. So, we do things around here is we have a lot of audience participation, and we love that. We get very active in the chat here. We sometimes, okay, a lot of time go off topic, but we start out with a little bit of community. And then we jump into whatever other programs are going on and a little bit of product news when we have it, and then the main topic, which today is dynamic groups. Very excited because we're in EA right now and we
Yeah.
are, yay, and we are adding people into that right now and doing some cool things. And Derek's going to give us a preview of what's going on there. And then at the end, when we have time, we talk about what's in the news. It's a little quiet, kind of boring in the news this week, believe it or not. But we did find a few interesting things. So we will talk about that and let people snark a little bit. That's kind of our favorite part because everybody gets to see what kind of funny things we can make fun of the news. So let's get to it. All right. So in the community, we have Pam has written another wonderful blog post. You decided to change platforms. Now what? It gives you some instructions on what to do when you are moving from one platform to another. Sean has done another great script, patch dashboard V1. And there is a question about, does Okta integration really need a server? So if you have any info on that, please head over and give some advice on that thread. And there are lots of other things going on in the community too, lots of back and forth on a variety of things. And actually, one of the topics in the community, Derek actually made a post about dynamic groups and gave a preview and some screenshots in there. But he's going to go more in depth today about that and give us a quick demo. So we will put the link to the dynamic groups preview in the chat so you can refer back to that later. But Derek, we're actually going to go ahead and hand it off to you to jump right in and show us what you got.
Sounds good. And just a note on that preview blog, the intent of that is really to give you a deeper understanding of what all's changing, because we are changing quite a bit in terms of the experience around user groups and device groups. And I'm going to go through some of it, but that's the intent of that article, is to really kind of go through it in a lot of detail and give you something to refer back to. So I am going to share my screen. Get that going. Oops, wrong one. All right, I've got a couple of slides that I want to go through first, and then we will switch over to the demo. There it is. Cool. So as I said earlier, my name is Derek Johnson, product manager at JumpCloud. I'm on the platform team. The platform team at JumpCloud is really focused on how do we, like our charter is, how do we make it easier for our everyday admins? so that they have a better time within Jump Cloud and can be as efficient as possible and aspire to get to a managed by exception type of environment. So that's the focus of the platform team. And today I'm going to come in and talk about dynamic groups. Dynamic groups has been a long time coming here at Jump Cloud. We started out with, user group suggestions. And so being able to create a consistent automated environment around group membership is something that we've been talking about and we've been working on, and we feel like we're finally at a point where we're ready to go into production across both users and devices. And so today I'm going to come in and talk about dynamic device groups. We started out with devices because it was furthest along from a development perspective. I saw a comment in there around what does EA mean? Yeah, we are in early access, and what early access means to us is that we're mostly code complete. We're just doing bug fixes at this point and making corrections to some basic things. But we won't stay in early access very long at all, and I'll go through the schedule in just a minute. But let's talk about why we did this first. So let's talk about what groups are. Groups are the gateway to the power of Jump Cloud. And so this is just a list of a lot of the main capabilities that exist on the Jump Cloud platform. And all of those things can be done via groups. All of these things can be done in bulk actions via groups. So there's already a lot of automation capability built within the Jump Cloud platform via groups. And because groups are so powerful in the context of all the things that you can do at Jump Cloud, it makes sense that the next step from an automation perspective is how do I automate the membership of my group? So a dynamic group is nothing more than a group where membership changes are automated. When we go GA, what you are going to see is fully automated dynamic groups across both users and devices. You're going to see us move away from suggestions, the suggestion language. We're going to replace that with review required, and you'll see us use terms like dynamic and static, and I'll go through what those are whenever I go through the demo. But think of review required as replacing suggestions. If you are a user of the user group suggestion environment today, and you may have participated in our automated beta of that capability, we're not going to touch those groups. Like, we're not changing the functionality of those groups when we go GA. They will stay working and configured exactly the way that they are today. We're changing the way that you would manage and configure those groups moving forward. And I'll show you what I'm talking about in just a second. One other area that we already had is we had an exemption capability within the context of user group suggestions, where you could say, okay, I'm going to set these rules and I'm going to exempt some users from these rules. It was a confusing experience. And so we doubled down there. We did a bunch of research, got a ton of feedback, and I'll show you the new exemptions experience and what that looks like as well. We are going to have real default groups moving forward. And so if you think about the default groups that existed at Jump Cloud already, these were just names that we applied to groups. There was no logic behind those groups. And so if you create a new organization after the GA date, those default groups will have the logic already built in terms of them being a dynamic group. Again, if you have an existing organization and you've got those default groups that already existed and you've configured and changed those groups, we're not going to touch those. Like, they're going to stay the same, but we will show you how to make them dynamic if you want to, and that'll all be in the documentation as well. And most importantly, you're going to see consistency between user groups and device groups. One of the things that we're really striving for on the platform team is when we have common experiences across the platform like this, we want you to be comfortable and familiar with what you're doing. And so you'll see a lot of the things I'm going to show you today on the devices side, it is going to look exactly the same on the user side. It's just the attributes will be different and the values will be different, but the way it functions and everything else will be the same. So I am now going to hop over to a test environment, and this is all in production. So Everything you see here, if you're already a member of the early access program, this is exactly what you're seeing. If you're not, feel free to reach out to myself, reach out to Becky, reach out to your account manager, and you want to participate in the early access program, you absolutely can, and we can get you enabled. But to walk you through this, I am just on the device group page on the left nav, and I'm going to add a new group. And so I'm going to give it a name. I'm going to call it DJ test. And the first thing I want to point out is the membership controls that you see here. Note the language of static and dynamic. So every group, as you know it today, in the context of a normal device group, because there's no such thing as dynamic groups for devices today, is a static group. It's a group that you as an admin manually go in and change the membership of. And so those groups will all remain the same. We're not touching those groups. And they will be, whenever you log into the console and you see this environment for those groups, it'll automatically default to static. But then in the context of dynamic, this is where we build the automation. And so you now have the capability to go in and make that group dynamic. And so note the language here, membership is managed based on what devices satisfy the rules applied to the group, right? So we're just applying rules to the group. By default, these will be fully automated dynamic groups. You have the option to switch to require the administrator to review any updates. This would work the same way suggestions do today, in that you have to take that second step of approving the membership change. But we're leaning into the automation capability. And so we made the decision to default it to dynamic in the beginning. But you've got that option. And I'll go through how review required works in case you're not familiar with that. But let's go ahead and start building this out. So I'm going to say operating system, and you guys can't see my drop down because of the screen share, but I'll read you the different attribute options that I have pulled down: operating system, architectural family, Linux distribution, major version, and creation date. So I'm going to pick operating system equals, and in this case, the value options are Mac OS, Windows, Linux, iOS, iPad, and Android. So I'm just going to pick Mac OS. So you can see my rule up here, operating system equals Mac OS. And I'm going to click on this preview button. And the intention of the preview button is just to give me the ability to do a preview of what that rule is going to return when it runs the query. And so if I wanted to spot check in here and see, okay, am I in the ballpark of where I need to be for this group? I've got that capability and I can see this here. So I'm going to close out that preview and I'm going to click save. And it's going to take me back through this view again and make me save it from here. And so if I go back to my DJ test group that I created, so it said that it saved it successfully. I'm going to show you, I'm going to go over here to the devices tab. I moved kind of quick there. It put me on the details tab. I'm going to go back over to the devices tab. And there are all of my devices that fit that rule. All my Mac OS devices are there, right? So let's say that I wanted to go in and I wanted to change that and add Windows to that group. So now I've got Mac OS or Windows. Something of note, what we're doing behind the scenes with the equals operator is we're basically, if you were to make the API call, it's an in. We're using an in operator. And we're abstracting that by allowing you to, by having the or statement here. So you can have multiple values on an equal statement. And so in this case, I'm saying equals Mac OS equals Windows. If you made the API call, it would be an in operator for Mac OS and Windows as the values that you would be selecting. So I'm going to add Windows. I'm going to click save. And look, it's giving me all of my Windows and Mac OS devices all in the same. So I'm going to click save that group. I'm going to go back in, go back over to my devices, and you can see now that my bound devices are 85 for total, and you can see now that I've got my Mac OS and my Windows devices. The power of this is, regardless of how devices are coming into your organization, by having these rules in place, you don't have to move these devices into the appropriate group. If you have your rules set up correctly, the way that you want them configured, and you have a group strategy in place, you can automate that step. And you no longer have to manually move these devices around into the appropriate groups such that the right policies are applied. So think about what that does from a time-saving perspective, but more importantly, think about what that does from a security or a compliance perspective. You're not making a mistake. You don't have the chance to make a mistake here because the rules are applied. So if you apply those rules and you test them out and you're comfortable with it, you can build a lot of really cool automation around the group strategy that you have for Jump Cloud and make it that much easier for yourself. So the other thing I briefly touched on was this concept of exemptions. And we all know that every single time that we have a rule, there's always an exception to the rule that we need to make, right? And so we know that that would be the case here. And the experience that we had before around user groups and suggestions and exemptions was not clear. We weren't using intentional language. We weren't making you go through intentional steps. And so we really tried to focus on that this time. And so I'm going to walk you through one. There's two ways that you can add an exemption. When you add an exemption, you're making an intentional decision. I always want to either include the object or I always want to intentionally exclude the object. In both cases can be true. And so in this case, I'm going to pick an exclude. So I'm going to say, I'm going to look for Leslie's device here. So Leslie's Mac. I don't want to ever be a part of this group. Maybe her device, maybe she's an admin and I don't want certain policies to be applied, or maybe, just based upon my group strategy, I don't want the policies to apply to that specific device. So I'm going to click on Leslie's Mac local and get rid of my search. And notice this pill here that pops up. If I hover over the pill, and again, you can't see it because of my screen share, the full name of the device pops up whenever I hover over it. So notice that this is here. If I go over to the devices side and I go looking for Leslie's device, oops, because I have the bound thing clicked. Notice that Leslie's device is no longer bound to this group. And there's a manual exclude exemption tag that's here in the table. So we wanted you to be able to see both from the device list view, what is an exclusion, what is an exception and what isn't an exception. And so we're just notating here that you've made an intentional decision to manually exclude Leslie's Mac from this group. Now, I'm going to go in and I want to show you a different way to do it. You can get back out of this, go back over here. I'm going to get rid of the exemption. And let's say that we've trained you guys to do most of your management of group objects within the list itself. So let's say I'm over here on the device list, and I go looking for Leslie's device this time. I can remove Leslie's device from this list. And notice that it created this manual exclude. And if I go back over here to the details tab, it shows back up. So you can add an exemption either from the details tab, or if you're more comfortable with adding or including, if you want to exclude or include something that would normally fit the rule, you could do it from the list tab as well. You can do it either way, bounces back and forth. And it should pick up exactly the intentional decision that you've made in terms of adding or removing that device. I hope that makes sense. I kind of went all around in terms of exemptions. So I'll pause there, Becky. Were there questions around exemptions specifically?
Yeah, actually, Lewis said, I'm more interested in having exceptions for policies and software management.
Okay. So being able to is looking to go a level deeper. I'm interpreting that as wanting to go a level deeper when it comes to the exemptions made for a specific group, right? In terms of
Yeah,
the
I think so.
policies or the software that's managed there.
Yeah,
That isn't
not just a device, but, you know, like
yeah,
maybe taking a group and exempting a certain policy for
right.
that group.
I would almost
Look
create a different group at that point or have a different group strategy. That's not something that we've talked about yet in terms of being able to make exemptions at that level. What we're trying to do right now with dynamic groups is really focus on the membership of the group and let the group be what drives the binding of policies or software or users or what have you. And so we haven't really talked about that. But let me, Luis, if you want to talk more about that one, just reach out and we can go into more detail there.
okay. And another one, Chris had asked, any possibility of custom attributes in the future where you can have a script return a value at
Yeah.
inventory and then map groups to that?
Yeah, Tom Bridge and I call that the extension attribute, or we refer to it as an extension attribute. We want to get to a place where, so you guys are touching on things that are near and dear to my heart. Another area that I focus on is around automation is workflows. And so being able to um, run a command, get a return, make that an attribute, and then use that attribute in a rule for either group membership changes or to take another action in the workflow. That's something that we're talking about, and definitely in Q4, you should see us start to talk a whole lot more about automations that are outside of group membership, and that would fall into that category. But yes, that is absolutely something that we're talking about of being able to leverage an attribute in a have a custom attribute that's created out of something like running a script, and then being able to use that as a rule. So,
Okay. And
and I'm
then
going to talk a little bit
another
about roadmap in just a second as well.
perfect. And then
Yep.
another one from James for an exemption question. Is there a way to exclude devices if they're assigned to a particular user group or if they're already a part of another device group?
Yeah. So
Are they reading your mind?
uh, they are. They're touching on a couple of roadmap things. So, an area that we're talking about is being able to have a tag or a flag as a result of being a member of a group, and then being able to use that tag or flag as a rule in another group. And so essentially you're being able to exclude an entire group out of this group membership. So that's another area. I wouldn't approach it necessarily from an exemption. Like it makes more sense to me to treat it as another rule attribute that we could use with a value. So the flag, if I'm in DJ's test was the name of this group. So like if I tag that one as DJ's test, I could have a rule that just excludes DJ's test from this group. So that would be the way that we're talking about approaching that. But yes, that's something that we are discussing as a next step. Cool. Let
Okay.
me keep going then, because it sounds like I'm touching on some things that I'll answer a few things as we go. A couple of other things I wanted to show you. Let me save this group. Note here, within the device group list is where I am right now. So this was the group that I created, DJ Test. Notice here that it's dynamic, and then you see the groups around it static. So we wanted to be able to show you an easy way to identify what groups are dynamic and what groups are static. The other part that I want to show you with this is I didn't really touch on review required. So let me start over, because I think the story will tell better if I start over. Let me delete this group really fast. I'm going to start a new, again, I'm going to call it DJ test. So if I click on dynamic, I go down here to review required. I'm going to, again, select architectural family equals Mac OS, keep it easy. And I'm going to click save. Right, so it saves my group. And notice that up pops here this, hey, I have pending reviews required here. So even though I've gone and I've configured it as Mac OS, and that was an intentional step, because I've selected review required, we want to force you as an admin to go verify that these membership changes are okay to do before we actually do them. So I can click review and notice that I now have all of my devices that fit that rule of Mac OS. So I can select them all for 26 and I accept and save. And now if I go into the group, you can see that those 26 devices are now bound to the device or bound to that group. So it works just like it does for user group suggestions does today. We're just calling it something different and review required. The other thing of note is everything that I've shown you today will be the same when we release the early access for user groups, for dynamic user groups. So all of the rule builder, all of the exception process, all of in the case of user groups, the user group list, review required, everything that you saw today will be the same on user groups. We did not want, so what that means is if you're using user group suggestions today, and let's say that you're not participating in the automated beta program where we gave you the capability to automate that step. Those groups are all going to show up as dynamic with review required already selected, because that's the type of group that you already have today. If you are participating in the automated beta program where you can automate that step, they will show up as dynamic, fully automated. So whatever you're doing today, it'll be exactly the same within this context, just the language is different. So, all right, so let me switch back over to my slides and build out the roadmap and timeline. So we started the dynamic groups, device groups EA on August the 1st. The plan right now is that we're gonna turn on user groups on the 10th. There's a possibility that we're gonna pull that in by a couple of days. We're running a little bit ahead of schedule. The team had a couple more bugs that they were wrapping up in that space. And so we should be able to turn that on by the 10th at the latest. Our plan is to go general availability. Notice we're not talking about a long bake time here. We're going to go to general availability on 8/28. And again, there's a strong possibility we're going to pull that in by a week. We gave ourselves a little wiggle room there in terms of the schedule, and things are looking good in terms of the feedback that we're getting. So it's likely that we're gonna be a little bit in front of that, and we'll communicate that out when the time comes. So what does that mean? What comes next? So the next thing you're going to see is additional operators. In the late Q3, probably September, it may bleed into Q4 a little bit. We're going to add contains, not contains. One of the things you can't do today is if you select not equals in the UI, you can't have multiple values, which means we're not supporting the not in operator yet. And so we're going to start supporting the not in operator to allow for you to do that. And we're going to have better rules logic just in terms of how, like right now, there's no real logic in terms of what values we present to you based upon the attributes that you've selected. And so we're going to do a better job of guiding you through a logical approach to the rule building. And so you'll see some improvements there. So that takes us to what comes after that. And so these things are all under consideration, and we're trying to figure out what we prioritize when, but there's two things that you're going to see us do more of. More attributes, like whether they're custom attributes, whether they're common attributes. We need to give you, we feel like what we've started with on both users and devices is a good start, but you're going to see us go down that path as well. And then we're exploring also the concept of group membership tags. And that goes back to the one thing that we were talking about earlier, which is being able to take the fact that you're a member of a group, or you're a user that's a member of a group, or a device that's a member of the group, and be able to flag that and use that as an attribute and a rule for another group. So as with automation of groups, we're giving you a lot of power, and we're also giving you some scary capabilities around the creation of policy conflicts. And we're being very mindful of that. And so when we start to go down the tagging path, or being able to have a group within a group, or nested groups, you'll hear the term said all the time. It can get scary sometimes, and we can get ourselves in a lot of trouble. And so we're trying to be mindful of that and give you as much tooling as possible to keep that from happening. So you'll see us. I don't think group membership tags will happen. If it does happen in Q4, it's because we prioritized it that way, but we're continuing to have a conversation about it, and we'll figure out what we want to do next there. So Becky, that was all I had content-wise for slides and demo, but would love to hear more questions and
Oh,
dialogue.
you've definitely got more questions. So,
Nice.
yeah.
I'm gonna stop sharing.
Okay, so Kelly wants to know, with the current dynamic groups, can I set up a group based on Mac OS version? Say they have 11, and when they upgrade to 12, it disappears from the group automatically?
Yes. So those attributes do exist. Um, it's a shame that you couldn't see my attribute drop down whenever I was screen sharing. But major version is an attribute that you could leverage, and so you would just say OS equals Mac OS, and then you would say major version equals 11, and then so anything that didn't fit that rule, or those two rules, would fall out of the group automatically.
Perfect. Next one from James. One other question. I currently have a group for Mac MDM devices. Then, once the auto enrollment process is done, I move the device to a Mac group. Will the dynamic group automatically grab those devices instead of them coming into the MDM group?
Yes, it would. Well, it could do both. You could have it go into the MDM group, and you could have a Mac OS group that it could flow into as well, if you needed both groups to exist. But it will absolutely flow directly into whatever group you create with the rules that you put in place. We're not going to block you just because it's part of an MDM group. We're not going to block you from putting that device in another group. There's something else around MDM too. MDM groups are a lot like dynamic groups in the way that they work, in that it's automation where you're coming through a different flow into Jump Cloud through the MDM flow. And so we're trying to be really mindful of that. And you may see us over time start to change the MDM group experience a little bit to act more like and look more like a dynamic group, the language we would use, the ability to configure it, those kinds of things. But right now we're putting a lot of language in place and warnings in place around keeping them separate. But to answer that specific question, think of them as mutually exclusive from each other for right now, and that your MDM flow still exists, but then you can go create other device groups that would then automatically move that group or move that device into that group as well. It's not going to take it away from the MDM group.
Mhm. How quickly will it grab the device?
It's near instantaneous. I mean, it should in less than 10 seconds typically. You're going to see that device show up in that group. You may have to refresh. Like, one of the things that we're working through some bugs right now is how quickly that does occur. And so just refresh your screen if you've done something and you're like, why, I've added that rule, and you immediately go in and you look at the group. And sometimes when I'm demoing, I've run into some delays, but if you refresh your screen, typically it shows up. And usually on the back end, it's already happened. It's just a matter of whether or not the front end is caught up.
Gotcha. Okay. There still more. These are great. If there are
This
concerns
is
about
awesome.
excluding a dynamic group from a dynamic group, what
Mhm.
about excluding a static group instead of selecting the same 5 to 10 devices each time?
Same thing. Like, if we go down the path of tagging and flagging groups and being able to use group membership as an attribute, we're not going to limit it just to dynamic groups. Like, if you had a static group and you called it, Todd's Mac group, whatever, and you wanted to use Todd's Mac group membership as an attribute for another group, and that were a static group, we would absolutely enable that. Like, once we go down that path of tagging and flagging and being able to use that as an attribute in a group, we would support that. It's just we don't have that capability today.
Gotcha. Okay, I think this is the last one for now. So if you don't select all in the review, does it add the unchecked to the exemptions list?
No, what it'll do is it will, um, because those objects meet the rule and you've chosen not to include them, they won't show up as an exception until you intentionally go add them as an exception. And so what that means is if you don't do anything, like if you just don't check those boxes, what that means is every time the query runs, they're going to show up in your queue as pending, as a pending change, because they meet the rule, they meet the query rules. And so they're going to keep showing up and they're going to keep prompting you for a membership change until you go in and add them as an exception. And then once you add them as an exception, then they won't show up in your review required queue. But that's a great question because we really wanted to make it an intentional step. We wanted, we didn't want to just automatically add that as an exception. We did talk about that, but we circled back to we'd rather make you make that intentional step, just so that you're very aware that you created an exception. Exceptions are kind of different and funky in that we really want to give you that capability, but we wanted all of the steps that you take around it to be very intentional because you're building automation. And like I said before, with groups and with automation, it's awfully powerful, but it can also get you into some challenging situations. And so we didn't want to automatically put you in one of those situations and you go, what happened to these? It met the rule. Where did it go? What if you forgot that you ignored it and then it added it as an exception? So we wanted to give you all of the kind of the breadcrumbs that you would need to be able to track through it. So
and then if you get too many exceptions, then you're just back to manual work again and you're trying
you
to
are
automate it,
right. And so we've limited the number of exceptions that you can put in right now to 25. The kind of the general thinking is if you've got more than 25, we probably don't have the right rules and you might rethink the rules that you've used for that group. And we recognize too that we haven't provided you with every attribute under the sun. But we feel like the attributes that we've provided right now are a solid start. And so give us that feedback on what other attributes do you want to see, and just in general, what other capabilities do you want to see around dynamic groups? We're very open to feedback. There's a Slack channel that you can join to give that feedback as well that Becky can hook you up with. If you're interested, if you're not participating in the early access program today and you are interested, like I said before, just reach out to me, reach out to Becky. But the whole purpose of that early access program is to get your feedback.
Yeah.
So please, you know how we are at Jump Cloud with feedback. Definitely want to hear it.
One more question popped up from James. Sounds like it wouldn't be in the MDM group very long. I have some automations set to the MDM group that need to run before it goes into the standard MAC group. Would I need to rework that flow, or could I tell it to review the changes, I guess, to cause it to pause?
James, check it, play with it, and see. My expectations are that when the device goes into your MDM group, it is not going to leave your MDM group. What's going to happen, think of them as mutually exclusive groups. It's going to stay in your MDM group, but what you can do is create another device group that is dynamic, and the device could flow into that group. It's not that it's leaving the MDM group, it's just going into another device group in addition to the MDM group. But play with it and see if it fits what you're looking for. And if you're running into trouble or you still have questions, one of the things I can do too, like I don't have a great understanding of MDM groups the way that some folks do here. That's another thing they could do is you could tell it to review the changes. You could set it up as review required if you don't trust it yet. That would be another thing I would tell everyone is if you're concerned that you don't have the right rules in place, or you're concerned about what the behavior is going to be, one of the suggestions that we always have when you're getting started is make that group a review required group and take that extra step of going, okay, am I ready to add this device to this group? And it just gives you that extra, confidence that it's going to do what you want it to do. And then when you're ready, you just unclick that review required, and it becomes fully automated. That's a strategy that we highly recommend for anybody that has any anxiousness over how the groups are going to work. So, but I'm serious, James. If you want to dig deeper here and you want me to pull in somebody that's got a lot more knowledge on the MDM flow, we can do that as well.
So Jeff is saying, wonder if we could onboard a new system automatically gets placed into a fresh system group, run automation, commands, software, then once that's verified, move to production users group ready to send to user.
I like the I First off, I love the idea of making it fully automated. Um, I'm assuming that the automation that you would use would be outside of Jump Cloud, on those devices once they're in that initial group. The thing that's not clear to me is what would drive that device to the next group. What would the attribute be? It's almost like you would need a custom attribute to use to drive it to the next group. And so it
Yeah.
goes back to like,
What would go from group to group to group?
yeah, yeah.
Would you have to use chocolatey or monkey or something to
But if I gave, I think what would work is if I gave Jeff a custom attribute like around command results. So being able to use the command result, because he talked about running commands on those devices, and then getting something back, and then being able to use that as the driver to the next group. I think it's a great idea. We would need to give you more customization around the attributes that you could use, I think, in order to achieve that. But you're on the right path. Like, this is exactly what we want out of dynamic groups. Like, we want to get to a place where you guys are managing by exception. Like, get to a place where you're onboarding users, you're onboarding devices with near zero touch as possible.
So he's saying maybe a feature request, new system, add Jump Cloud agent, then have some Jump Cloud magic to verify, software installed, then
Yep.
tag to magic, move it to next group.
Hey,
That's
Jeff,
what he wants to.
can you submit a feature request for that? That would be awesome. I'd love to have that in my back pocket to be able to tag things to.
And
That
yeah,
would
if
be great.
anybody else wants it, put that in too, and then that way
Yeah.
the multiple requests just helps move it up the chain.
These questions are awesome. I'm so excited that you guys are excited about this capability. It's been so long coming. The team has worked really, really hard on this. We feel like the experience is much better than where we were before, and this is just the first step. Like, we think of dynamic groups as a primitive, um, and if you think about automation, there's multitude of primitives. Like, we could build a primitive around user or device inactivity. We could build a time component primitive. And we're talking about all of those things and being able to build automation like around auto suspending a user upon inactivity, or giving temporary elevated permissions on a device that expire because the time has expired when you set it. Like, those are all automations that we want to build above and beyond dynamic groups. And so you'll hopefully in the near future, you're going to see me come in here and talk about those things as well, because dynamic groups is just the tip of the iceberg and some of the automation things that we're talking about. Yep. Yep. Yep.
Yeah. Awesome. Um, IT hour, or she says IT hour slowly becoming Jump Cloud Labs. I love it. Hey, this is great. And please, if you do want to be part of the EA, like Derek said, ping one of us on the Slack lounge or email us. You can always reach out to us at community@jumpcloud.com. That's a good place to reach out to us if you aren't connected to us another way. But we would love to have you be a part of this. And as a reminder, to submit a feature request, you just go into your admin console and you can submit a feature request that way right in the product. It's an easy way to do it. And so James says temp admin elevation would be huge. Near future?
Um, if I get my preferences, yes. I want to. I'm pushing really, really hard. We have a really cool design that we've already done. And we have a pretty good idea how we do it. It's just a matter of getting that done.
So Jeff, send me a request if you want EA for this. I need your email that's attached to your org and your org ID in order to get you enabled, and I'll send that over to Derek.
Yep, it takes just a second once I have it.
Yeah, it's really easy.
Yep.
This is awesome. And Michael says this would be really huge. There's nothing like this that's good for Macs for admin elevation. So
Yeah.
see, you're getting people excited. This is what
Oh, right.
IT Hour is all about.
I'm glad I planted that seed and got that reaction because it's pervasive, and we're, like I said, we're pushing really hard for some of these other automations. It's just a matter of where it fits within the priority of all of the things that we're doing at Jump Cloud. And so you guys know how much we're constantly innovating and constantly trying to bring new capabilities. And so I think that's an area that's going to make it, though. So hopefully I'll have an update for you relatively soon in terms of timing and what that would look like.
Very nice. And see, Kelly's on that too.
Mm-hmm.
So keep saying things in the chat if you want to continue. Let's see, Jacob, what I do to accomplish what Jeff is talking about is to use the Jump Cloud API in some of my Jump Cloud commands. You can basically say get serial number query JC for device ID. Then you can take whatever action you need to on that device with the Jump Cloud API from your command. So
also, Becky, just so everyone knows, all of the capability that I showed you today exists within the API. So if you're more comfortable, you don't want to mess with the console or the UI, you can do everything that I just described to you around device groups, and you'll be able to do the same thing with user groups via the API. And in fact, everything, like right now, even before, no, you would have to be part of the EA in order to have access to those capabilities within the API. So when the user group stuff comes along next week, you will be able to do that by API as well.
Chris is saying granular API access would be great there, though, since you need to put an API key into the command script. So yeah,
I agree.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, we've got about 10 minutes left. I'm going to circle back to what I forgot to say in the beginning. Alexa, welcome back. She was gone for 2 weeks.
Wow.
I meant to say that in the beginning and just got distracted. How was your vacation?
Well, thank you for welcoming me back. It was really good. Yeah, we had a great time. I actually traveled with my aunt, so it was kind of a cool trip to take. And yeah, we were in Switzerland and Italy, and we drank a lot of coffee, had a lot of pasta, walked a lot. So it was pretty cool. Both very, very beautiful places. We were in St. Moritz in Switzerland, and we did Lake Como in Italy. And yeah, I mean, just two of like the most beautiful places I've ever seen. So yeah, it was pretty magical.
Not jealous at all.
Lake Como is amazing.
It is totally.
Place.
Yeah. And I mean, they have, the city of Como there, but then they have all these cute little towns around the lake, and it's just beautiful. We, the hotel we were at, they had bikes that you could take out. And so we, biked around all the little towns, and yeah, it was a lot of fun.
They have a ferry you can take across the lake.
Yes.
Too.
Oh my gosh, we did that. It was quite fun.
Glad you made it back.
Oh, thanks.
No, glad you made it back without any like White Lotus kind of stuff happening. So
oh my gosh, That is so funny that you said that, because the hotel we stayed at in Switzerland totally gave me White Lotus vibes.
Oh my God.
And I was like, I don't even have like anyone to like tell this to. So now I got to tell you guys. But yeah, it was making me laugh. But yes, no bad experiences like that.
That's good.
Yes.
Well, I'm glad you were with someone and that you
Yeah.
got to share the experience and everything.
Yeah.
That is really cool. Any fun plans for the weekend? Anyone?
I want to find out where DJ Test is playing.
DJ
Because
Test, he's retired,
that's where I want
man.
to be.
DJ Test used to perform, and he's not performing anymore.
It's too bad.
No, it's funny because I mean my initials are DJ,
Yeah.
and
Oh, that was an ongoing thing in the chat. If you,
Yeah,
since you
there
were
were
presenting, you
lots
missed
of
it. So
what's funny though is like a lot of my coworkers in my previous job used to call me DJ, and there's only one person that calls me DJ, and that's my mother. Like she calls me DJ, and I never had the guts to tell people, no, I'd rather be called Derek. Don't call me DJ. But it's always a running joke with everybody I run across, is like, because there's always at least one DJ at a company anywhere you work. But no, I
There's
love them.
probably more than one DJ. They just probably do it on the weekends, and nobody really knows about it.
that might be better than having the initials BS.
This is
Oh.
true, right? But does anybody ever try to call you BS?
They try to call me on my BS. Actually, I wear it with pride, because I'm always on my BS regularly. So it can be fun. In fact, one time, a long time ago, like AOL days, when I had when I used that for chat, because that was all my parents had where they were, because they're so far out in the middle of nowhere that was all they had for internet access. And I had a username, and I put BS at the end of it. And my mom asked me about it, and she's like, why do you have that? And then at the, before I told her, she's like, now be nice. And I'm like, Mom,
Take a second.
those are my initials. Oh, yeah, the initials you gave me.
Correct.
'Cause she named me, and she gave me my nickname of Becky, short for Rebecca. So, James says, my friend has the initials FU. Funny story, he was buying a house and they gave them so much trouble. He had a lot of joy putting his initials FU on the documents. See, I'm the same way. I love initialing things BS.
That's awesome.
And my uncle's name is Bobby, and so he also has the same initials. So, yeah. Kelly says, I have it because of you. Yeah, exactly.
But I do
That
have to
reminds
give
me
a
of that
shout
old
out.
commercial. Go ahead.
No, I have to give a shout out to Derek, because he has been on like Barbenheimer level marketing internally with dynamic groups. Like every company wide meeting, every customer success meeting, like I think I've heard this presentation. Maybe today's the fourth time, I think.
Are you tired of me yet?
And no, I admire your consistency. It's always like so neatly laid out, and you never miss anything. And I think I know it by heart now. So
Thank you so
good
much
job.
for saying
It's
that.
amazing.
We've been working, so I look at it this way. The team has worked so hard on this. I would feel like I'm doing a disservice to them if I weren't doing that, because it's the way we are here at JumpCloud. It's our culture, and the last thing I want is for us to have missed something, or not market it the right way, or not be telling our story. And so I'm a huge advocate for the whole thing. Like, it's just, and the biggest shout out, and in case people aren't aware, I know Lindsay's been in here several times. Lindsay is the true, I call her the OG of dynamic groups. Like, it's her vision, her leadership. She got this started. She has been so critical to this entire capability. And so as much as it's been me as the face right now, I'm always going to give props to Lindsay, because none of this would be possible without her. So
That's one thing I really like about Jump Cloud. Like I've been here almost 2 months now, and everybody's so generous with their like kudos and with their praise and with their shout
Mhm.
outs, and it's like such a like wholesome part of the company culture.
Yep. That's what
Yep.
makes it magical.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we've only got about 3 or 4 minutes left, so I won't really we'll put the news in the show notes so you can go over what we had going on. There were some interesting things around YouTube using AI, The Boring Company, which is the name of one of Elon Musk's companies, is going to dig a tunnel under Las Vegas. I think it was Jeff that said he used to live in Vegas, so I thought he would get a kick out of that. But we will save those for another time. We want you to enjoy your weekend. Hopefully, it'll be nice weather. First full weekend in August, all that jazz.
Mhm.
Yeah. Thanks again, Derek, for joining us. Excellent job. You did such a great job. I think we'll have you back.
Nice. Can't wait. I need to get some more content to come back with. Like we need to go build some more automation so that I have something really cool to show. So,
Absolutely.
and anytime you want to
Absolutely.
pull me in, if we want to talk about automation, even if I don't have a feature, but we just want to talk about automation ideas, I'd be very open to that as well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. This group loves to riff on stuff like that. So if you
Yeah.
have an idea you want to talk through, Kelly says, I think Becky is threatening you. Yeah, I'm threatening him with a good time, Kelly, because this is fun. This is fun. But thanks everyone for joining us. Have a wonderful weekend, and we will see you next week. So take care, everyone.
You guys, bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.